it was a very hard decision because that was part of who I was. But I realized that in life I will probably try a lot of stuff and most of them will never work. I need to keep trying and keep figuring out what is my path in this universe. I give it my best, but it wasn't enough. And I don't think it's like you're waking up one day and like, I'm done. No, it's a journey, it's a process.
It starts with just taking that leap.
Man, you have to work hard. You have to be incredibly smart.
Choose something that even if it fails, you are going to be proud of it.
Doesn't matter how badly you got beaten in battle.
Be kind, be kind, be kind.
Become a better person, a better leader, the better business.
Go to that.
I'm Samuel Donner, and this is Finding Founders.
Let's start with, can you state your full name and what you do?
So my name is Yehuda Niv, founder of Spines. About 12 years ago, I published my first book and I realized the publishing process is broken. So I decided to bootstrap my own publishing company named Niv Publishing. Today, it's the largest publishing house in Israel. Publishes more than 1,200 titles a year. And about 5 years ago, I finished building the management team. That's what allowed me to get my life back and eventually allowed me to start another company, which is Spines, an AI-based publishing platform. Who publish today 2,500 American authors, and we are just keeping on growing month by month.
Yeah, we talked a few months ago, and it already grew like another couple hundred titles. It's moving.
Yes,
it's exciting to see all the growth, and we're going to get into maybe the more humble beginnings of this crazy rise. But I want to talk a little bit about a transition from music to engineering, because that's the first big transition. Yeah, we're starting from the beginning. Can you tell me a little bit about what was going on in the music life and why you wanted to transition to engineering?
I started music because I was a very shy kid. I had problems with speaking, with pronunciation, and then realized that while I'm doing music, everything improved. So that's why I went that route. But my music never found an audience. I was the only one cheering for my own music. After about, I believe, 6 to 7 years for me trying to...
6 to 7 years.
From age of 15 until age of 22, 23, when I finally realized, okay, that's not going to happen. Parallel to that, I was learning engineering in high school. I served in the Israeli Air Force as electronics engineer, and while I was so before the publishing stage of my life, I was really into engineering. I really loved all the physics, all the mathematics.
So what it seems like is like you had this love of music that you were pursuing fairly aggressively, but luckily you had something on the back burner that was like pretty solid, like an engineering degree. That's gonna you can pursue just that and have a pretty comfortable life. But on the other hand, it's like you had this dream for so many years. Can you tell me a little bit about what was the thought process of actually saying, okay, I'm going to put this to the side and focus on just engineering and seeing what kind of opportunities that brings? Because I think a lot of people have dreams and try them out, and sometimes they don't work, and then they get stuck on that dream and never dream again. You've built these amazing companies. So I'm curious, how did you let that go so something new could occur?
So first thing, it was a very hard decision because that was part of who I was. But I realized that in life I will probably try a lot of stuff and most of them will never work. And I need to keep trying and keep figuring out what is my path in this universe. And trying to doing something for most of my youth and not accomplishing any major goal regarding that. So I decided that probably music is not my path. I give it my best, but it wasn't enough probably. And I don't think it's like you're waking up one day and like, I'm done. No, it's a journey. It's a process.
Yeah.
And I lost interest in trying to push that. On the other hand, I was enjoying all the electronics and engineering studies and all the mathematics and all the physics. And I was quite good at that. So I realized that's more safe career journey. But eventually I went to another route, expand that.
I guess going into engineering, because you started engineering college in 2007, and then you had a bunch of different programs that you were a part of. But I guess I would love to hear where you took that engineering knowledge up until right before you wrote your first book.
All right. So it started in high school when I was the electronics study in high school. And then I pursued it to practical engineer before the military service. And 3 years in the Israeli Air Force, I fixed electronics of F-15 and F-16.
That's cool.
It was fun troubleshooting all those electronic stuff. And then right after that, I started the first degree in electronics engineering, and then I continued directly to the master degree. But I decided to publish my book eventually. And
Why?
that was the book. Okay, so I wrote that book throughout my military service. And in the Israeli Air Force, you are doing a lot of patrols and you have a lot of available time to think. And I had all of those crazy ideas, like the only reason we know what happened on planet Earth thousands of years ago is because people wrote books. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I want my legacy to be here way after I'm gone, I need to write a book. And I felt that urgency. And I realized that because I was very good at writing, I very enjoyed writing songs. I realized, okay, if I couldn't do it with music, maybe I could make it happen with writing books. Okay. While I was doing my military service, I've written my first book, but then I let it sit in the drawer for 4 years.
Wow.
Okay. I was very I felt it wasn't good enough, but I always had the dream that someday I will publish that book. And eventually I did it. I realized all the challenges in the publishing. I realized, okay, that process hasn't changed for a century.
What does it take to publish a book?
So I reached out to about 70 publishers in Israel.
Wow.
Most of them rejected me. Okay? and of course, I had to pay a lot of money to get my book published.
How much do you have to pay?
It cost me I'm telling you, in 2013, it cost me 40,000 shekels, which is about $12,000.
Wow.
Okay? For a student, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. By the way, nowadays it's much more expensive than that. Prices went up. And that's the opportunity with Spines.
Yeah.
We can save all that cost with AI. But
We'll get to shortly. Right now, we're stuck in the past. We're with this $12,000 problem. And so you foot that money, but you're thinking like, I publish this book and everyone in Israel is going to buy it.
I had publishing dream of becoming a published author and my book turning into a best-selling and building a career as an author. But as I said earlier, in life you try many stuff. Most of them will never work. So that was another thing I tried. Everything you are trying and not gaining the traction you'd like to is part of the journey.
Yeah.
Yes. And I believe that writing songs led me to write a book. Publishing that book led me into the publishing business. And because I had this background in engineering, that allowed me to re-engineer the publishing process and build the largest publishing house in Israel, which eventually allowed me to fundraise a lot of money and build Spines. So
we will get to, but I want to talk a little bit about, you go through this publishing process, right? It's $12,000 to actually release the book. I want to know, what does that $12,000 go to? How long is the process? And then at what point do you have the book in your hand? I want you to walk me through each step in the process as you were experiencing it for the first time publishing this book.
From my experience, the process was terrible because our process took more than a year. And I'm like, wow, why this is taking so long? Like I already finished writing it. Why is it taking so long?
Yeah.
And I'll give you, for example, it took them about 2 months to connect me with an editor.
Just to connect, not even for the editor to do anything.
Okay, and I'm like, all the time could be saved if the system was automated. Yeah. Okay, finally, I'm working with the editor, and eventually what I'm getting is, in my mailbox, I'm receiving a printed copy of the book with all the editing notes written down with pen. God. And now I have to go over that with another pen in different color for them to know what is the editor, what is mine, and then I have to resend them that and hope it will not get lost in the mail because that's 6 months of my time into that already. And then someone has to go over all those editing suggestions and implement that into the Word file. And I'm like, why not work directly on the Word file? We track changes. Back in the day, Google Docs was already available.
Like you had all this technology, but the publishers were so stuck in the past that they didn't know how to utilize it.
By the way, they still do. What I just described you, that's the experience. We are in 2025. That's the experience of a lot of authors who are not realizing why the heck the publishing process is such inefficient process.
Yeah.
Okay? That's only the editing. After there's so many stuff that I believe could be improved. And then I realized probably I'm not the only one experiencing that. So I start to communicate with other authors and they all had the same experience and I realized, okay, maybe
this
that's
needs to change. But I want to hear about you.
Yeah.
You released the book. What happens to the book?
So I had an amazing event with all my friends and family. Everyone was happy. I sold about 80 copies in that event. That's amazing. I was super excited. For me, back in the day, that was the most important thing I've ever done. I believe publishing a book, regardless of the process, regardless of what happened after the book is launched, having your ideas, your words, your stories combined into a book and having the experience of holding the book in your hands, your friends and family can experience the book afterwards and give you a feedback and tell you how they enjoyed reading that and giving all the amazing comments on what you've written. I believe that's a human experience that everyone in Spines. I'm lowering the barrier, okay? So it will be available and much more seamless and easy for everyone else. I had this huge excitement and eventually my book did not succeed.
What does it mean to not succeed?
I sold about 400 copies, okay? But the publisher demanded for me to print 1,000 copies in advance. So as a student, having all of those copies in your home, that's not a nice experience. By the way, I don't believe in pre-printing, putting in a warehouse a lot of copies. I'm a huge fan of print-on-demand technology.
Inventory. That is just taking up a bunch of space. I mean, in a warehouse or it seems like your apartment or dorm room.
If you're a student.
And then it's like, so you sold 400 books, which is a lot of books.
Yes.
That's regardless of maybe the publisher didn't think that it was this huge success. Like you did put your ideas on paper. You have a physical manifestation of your ideas. You sold 400 copies, which is like pretty cool. But I think even cooler is you now have this insight into what the publishing process is and more importantly how terrible it is. So how do you go about starting the process of trying to fix?
So one of my professors in the engineering study, he wanted to publish a book and I just launched mine and I'm like, here is a copy of my book. And we met for a coffee and he asked me,
401 copies given away now.
He asked me, could you help me publish my book because you've already gone through the process, guide me through that process. So I helped him publish the book and I was very involved. So I saw that while I'm being involved, I could save him a lot of headache that happened to me. And it started just to try to help, no money involved, to try to help the people. And eventually, I realized why not start selling that service. And at the beginning, my vision was I will teach authors how to become a self-published author. Like they don't need a publisher or old-fashioned. You can do it by yourself. But soon I realized that actually authors don't want that. They want to pay someone to take care of everything for them. I had a client, like one of my first clients, he wanted to print copies and I told him, I will connect it to a very good printing factory and you can print directly with him. And he's told me like, maybe I will pay you, you profit from that and you work with him directly. And then I realized that, okay, this is an opportunity. People don't know what they need. They don't know how to do that. They don't want to learn how to become a publisher themselves. So then it started to shift toward what is eventually become Niv Publishing. It was very humble beginning, started in my dorm room. I remember that I was working as a lecturer. I was teaching electronics. And I remember I had no idea about business. I understood nothing about business. And I realized that all the salaries that I'm making by working as a lecturer, everything I'm paying out to service providers, I'm making no money. So I realized, okay, I need to start to learn business because I had no business experience. So I find few good mentors and they start to teach me of how to actually manage people, how to actually structure a company, how to make sure you're making a profit, okay? And step by step, I started building Niv Publishing. Today, it's over 400 team members.
Wait, so how do you get to the like first team member? Because like this first step, it seems, is you're talking to people around school that might want to publish books, and then you're like, oh, I can connect you to the publisher. I know you do it. I'm building out my network of different contacts and saying, okay, I have my publishing here. I have maybe my editors here. And so you're putting together this network. But right now, it just feels like it's a bunch of people that you know, and you're just connecting them all together.
That's exactly what it was.
How does it go from you just making a bunch of calls to like hiring your first employee or like automating your first process? What is the development from the initial beginnings?
So I remember that I went to my accountant and I told her that I want to start hiring people. And she told me, do not do that. And I'm like, why not? Because now you have to pay all those taxes and you don't profit enough. And I told her, but I want to hire people to learn all the nuance of being an employer. And she told me, you are not making any money. And I'm like, yes, but I want to learn. Eventually, I ended up replacing her. So it was very small steps. And for the first, I think 2 to 3 years, for the first 2 years, I was still working, okay, as a lecturer. I was finishing every day by 2 to 3 p.m. And I worked until midnight on the business. And same go on every day. And it was very hard. And eventually, I realized that while I'm trying to combine both being an employee and being a business owner, I realized those together will never work. Okay, but I was very afraid quitting my job because I needed the income.
Yeah, that's
finance all my
security.
failure.
That's security. Now you're fully running the business.
So what I did, I quitted my job and I took a loan for 100,000 shekels. It's about $30,000. And that was enough money for 6 months. Okay. I moved to the center of the country where I'm living right now. And I told myself, I have 6 months. I have to make it happen. Okay. If that will be a failure, I will go back to my parents' home. I quitted my job. I took a loan. I moved to the center of the country. I went full on, like full power, no days off, very, very little sleeping. It was a hustle. But eventually, the business started to grow. And I started to have a lot of successful books. I remember my first best-selling books was in 2016 in Israel, and it was the #1 bestseller books in Israel.
Who is this person that you partnered with?
By the way, now he's my sales manager in Niv Publishing. Yes,
no way.
So back in the day, I realized that there are a lot of influencers operating in Facebook, uploading posts that reached thousands of likes, shares, comments. Maybe I could take those posts and turn them into books, and maybe those books will sell. So I started reaching out to all of those influencers, and I told them the best 100 posts, turn them into a book, and let's see what happens. And apparently that was a huge success, but the industry hated me for that because everyone, I remember me being on debate on TV, in the news, me versus the
established publishers.
And I said, the books of Niv Publishing, it's not really literature. They are not publishing good quality books. And I'm like, who are you to judge? My books are selling more than yours. So it was like a lot of crazy stuff happened.
Yeah.
I think me being very bold and trying to bring a new value to the market, like creating new types of books. Of course, eventually, I was able to build a very strong brand, and that's what attracts more successful authors, and that's what helped Niv Publishing to become what is nowadays. But the start was very tricky.
I feel like, as it often is, it's hard to start and be a disruptor with the best, most respected quality, because a lot of people that have been in the business for ages are already doing that. So it's harder to compete on that level, and it's harder to do something new. But if you do something that maybe, I don't know, a little bit more salacious, or work with previously like people that had no publishing credibility, like influencers, but gave them a new way to reach their fans, I feel like that gives you an edge on the competition. I'm curious, how did you transition from the Niv Publishing, where people are like, oh, he just works with influencers, it's not real literature, to the more respected brand that you became later? Like, what were the things that you did to turn the image? Because I imagine if something's working with all those influencers, would you want to stop, right, if it's working so well?
Yes. Very quickly, we become the number one go-to for influencers. Like, all the Israeli influencers, they all realized how much money my authors are making. They all wanted to create their own books. So we become the number one publishing houses for influencers. And that gave me access to mentors, all the business leaders on the social media who wanted to build their personal brand as an expert. So they want to publish books as well. So that's how I turned that from the influencers publishing house to the business
influencer
publishing. Yes, business. And that's unlocked because most of them become afterward very famous people. So that's unlocked that we become the publishing house of celebrities. Okay. So it was a transition from influencers to business mentors to celebrities. Everyone just wanted to be published by Niv Publishing because that's the strongest brand in Israel.
How long does that transition take?
About decade.
Wow. Yes. Okay. Like, all this stuff has to happen in a year. Wow.
It's slow and steady. Every year, our revenue grow, our head count grow, our titles count grow, our book sales grow. Like, it was a continuous progress year by year. And about 5 years ago, I realized, okay, I have all of these layers of team and managers, and I become very good at managing businesses. So I want to take the next step, which is having a company that I do not manage myself.
Wow. Wow. So you had built it up to where now this was after how many years of building it?
About 8 years into the process, I started to work on making this business not dependent on me.
I guess, like, there's so many interesting threads we could pull on here, but what do you, like, a couple questions. Do you think you could have done that process earlier? You said, I'm going to offload this at year 8. Why didn't you do it at year 6 or year 5 or year 4? Yeah. Why did the time feel like now to start to offload that?
So my journey with Niv Publishing was very hectic. I almost went bankrupt twice. I had no previous business history. It was my first successful company, and I didn't know how to manage cash flow. I didn't know how to work properly with the banks. I was doing everything possible wrong. But I had a very strong community of authors that, no matter what, kept backing up their publishing house. And that's what allows me to overcome so many challenges throughout. And eventually, after I got to a very steady place, I realized I'm not going bankrupt anytime soon. That's the time to build the management. I finished structuring very strong operations. Now this is time to see if it's possible.
How did you do that?
Yes.
Like, how do you build, like, strong operations, and how do you have the right systems? How are you choosing the right people? Also, like, something that I imagine you have to do if you're taking a step back from a company that you've built is align the management team with the same incentives that you have. And so instead of doing some kind of, like, salary based, I imagine if you're taking a step back, you want the incentive structure to guide their action. And so it's like, all right, like, you're incentivized by profit. So a certain, whatever percent of profit gets, like, to you. How did you incentivize that management team, build the management team, and also build yourself the tools to ensure that, like, the ship wasn't being turned the wrong way while you were taking your eyes off of it?
Yes. So, by the way, that's an amazing question, because I think my advantage was I'm very technological oriented. So I start to develop systems, and those systems helped me because I could manage very wisely because I have dashboard for everything. But even before that, what I realized is because I didn't had the right experience, I went exploring for very good mentors. And I think I'm very lucky that a lot of successful business persons saw me, they told me, we like him, and they started giving me advices and they helped me, they showed me the way, and I'm a very good learner. I was asking them questions, they told me to do something, I realized I should have done what he just told me before. I learned the hard way that when you finally get someone very smart to give you advice, do what he tells you first and think about it after. Throughout my journey, I had about 10 mentors, okay? Everyone taught me his philosophy for business, and that's what allowed me to scale the company in the right way. And everything was technology based, so we have very sophisticated system in place.
You have systems and dashboards so that, like, all right, you have maybe a meeting once a week or once a month, and you just look at all these dashboards. I have the information that I need to give direction to my management team.
Yes. I believe that everything's supposed to be KPI oriented. Like you have to determine what are the right KPIs to track that you can, in a quick overview of your dashboard, you can know what happened in the company. And then you can drill into stuff that you're seeing that are probably not going well as you wanted them to be. And I really believe that everyone should have his own responsibility. So let's say I'm hiring a marketing expert to become the CMO of the company. So I'm not here to teach him what he's supposed to do, vice versa. I'm waiting for him to bring the value because he's probably a better marketer than I will ever be. So what I learned in the process is for me to succeed, it's not me, it's the team. I need to become very good in finding talent. I need to become very good in persuading that talent to work for me and then keep them in the process. And while doing that, give them freedom to create because they are way smarter than me and what they are doing. A lot of people have this ego problem that they think that they know and they think that they are the source of knowledge. In every team meeting with my team leaders, I always tell the answers. I'm only here to guide. I'm only here to lead, okay? I'm only here to take the hard decision if necessary, but you guys know what needs to be done and how it should be done. That business is practice of leadership. You have to lead your team members, you have to lead your customers, you have to lead your investors, you have eventually lead your industry. You do not supposed to do everything by yourself, vice versa. As you will rely more and more on people, you'll probably create more, move faster, and create more impact. So that's my philosophy regarding how to scale up and how to build a successful business.
Did you feel like you could focus on something else? Like, what were the indicators that your management team was actually doing what they needed to be done? Because I feel like it's like leaving your baby with a babysitter and you're like, oh, like I've been taking care of this baby its whole life, and now I'm passing it off to someone. I have to really trust them to make sure that they're taking care of it with the care that it needs. At what point did you feel comfortable taking like that step back?
My leaders in my companies, they all had to earn my trust. It's not something that I give for free. They prove themselves for years. They are very capable leaders. I really believe in their abilities. It's very hard to give away your baby for other people to manage, but it's the only way because you cannot be in control of everything. And the more you think you are in control, the less you are in control. So it's the opposite. And if you're trying to do everything by yourself, you are not moving fast enough. So because of that philosophy, I realized that even I'm feeling it's not the right time to release all the control to the team members, I need to experience that, see how it works, correct them, and give it a chance. And it took me a while to optimize everything, okay, to find the right way to do that. Nowadays, finally, the CEO of Niv Publishing is a very capable CEO. He manages everything. I have a meeting with him once a month. And for me, that's a whole operating business that I'm not focused on anymore, but it's keep growing without me. And it's keep creating more authors' success without me. And it keep publishing amazing books without me. Wow. And I think that's experience of me working in the halls of Niv Publishing, and there are people who probably I'm seeing for the first time, and I don't know if they are our authors, if they are employees, if they're, that's an amazing experience. And I know that I had to go through so many difficult challenges to accomplish that. So that's an amazing experience as an entrepreneur to be able to create that.
So you have built this whole amazing company in 2019. When do you start to think about AI-based publishing?
Okay, so what I did after that is, you probably know Dan Pena. He's the crazy guy who will teach you how to acquire companies. I went to learn his method, and I did 4 M&As. I acquired different publishers, integrated them into what has become Niv Group. And after that, I realized, let's start to invest in tech companies because I'm very tech-oriented. So I invested to date in 14 different Israeli startups. And while I'm doing that, I came across this upcoming technology that was 2 years before ChatGPT, and I realized what those founders are working on, and that is the future, okay? And I have 2 different options. Either I will become irrelevant by this new technology, or I will be the one who will lead this opportunity in the publishing space. So I looked at my background and I realized I have the engineering background, I have the publishing background, I have how to build a company background. I'm also an author, so I understand all the aspects of what I'm trying to create. And I realized it sets me up for that challenge. Okay, so like that's my new challenge. And I started this new company with my own capital. Soon, very quickly, I realized my capital will not be enough. Creating a tech company, that's a very different challenge.
It's capital intensive. You need millions.
The talented guys you are about to hire, they're very expensive, and you need a lot of them. So I raised $1.3 million from angels investors, and I start to build. By the way, before we named Spines, actually the first name of the company was Booksay. Eventually, I realized it's not a clever name, because everyone thinks the AI actually write the books. We are not here to replace authors. We are here to emphasize authors, to help them, to make their journey seamless. We're not here to replace them. So eventually we changed the name to Spines. But I started out, I fundraised for the first time. Suddenly, it's not a bootstrap anymore. That's a VC-backed company. And then I launched the product on January 23. And we grew very fast. Authors really liked what we are doing.
Yeah,
and
what exactly, as you said, you were empowering authors. So what is the list of things that Spines does? Because it does a lot.
So Spines, what we do, we are not a publishing house. We are not a self-publishing process or service. We are a publishing platform. That's a new concept. We allow any author who have a manuscript, let's say you spent over a year writing your manuscript, soon you will realize that the top tier publishers will reject you. Either you will have to go to a self-publishing process, that means you need to figure out publishing, or now you will go to a vanity publisher who will charge you tons of money. Both of them will take 6 to 18 months, but suddenly you have this new alternative, which is Spines. Now you can upload your manuscript to the process. The AI scan the books, understand what it's about. We can do the proofreading for you.
Wow.
We can do the cover design for you. So after we scan the book, we start to suggest you with categories. There are thousands of categories to choose from. You have to choose that very wisely. That will determine the possibility of your book to be successful. From the content of the book, from the category, we start to generate covers. Personally, I've met over 8,000 authors in my career, and everyone had the same complaint. Why didn't the cover designer read my book? With AI, we actually solved that because we scan the book, understand what it's about. Now we start to create covers based on that, very accurate covers. We also optimize the metadata of the book. Every book has an XML file that the author needs to figure out by himself, and he will never do. That's what will determine the visibility of the book on the different platforms. So we optimize that with AI as well. We can format the book as well. Algorithms scan the files, understand what is a headline, what is a paragraph. We tag the book. Then we pour that into our algorithms of how the book should look like. We create over 70 versions out of that to optimize for each different platform, because every platform requires different file size, different settings. We take care of everything, and then we'll list the book across 100 distribution channels worldwide, not only on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Baker & Taylor, Book & Miller. We integrate with everyone, not only ebook and print-on-demand versions, but also audiobooks. So let's say you want to create an AI-narrated version of your book. We can even create your own voice model and use your own voice instead of you going 40 hours into a studio and trying to read out loud your book. We only need 3 minutes of your voice and it's done. We created huge value, and that's why we grew very quickly throughout 2023.
Wow.
Led by Aleph of Michael Eisenberg. That's considered a top-tier Israeli VC for early-stage companies. Then we continue growing so fast throughout 2024. Actually, in 2023 and 2024, the revenue of the company grew in more than 1,000% per year.
Wow.
Crazy.
How are you building the systems processes as a leader in this company to ensure success? Because when something's growing that fast, it's important it grows in the right ways. It's important it garners the right audience. It's important that you're delivering on the value that people are expecting. What are some of those learning lessons with a company growing this fast? Because like Niv grew fast, but it seems nowhere near how fast this has grown. And so I'm curious, what was it like being the leader of a company growing that fast, and how did you adapt to make sure that you could guide it in the right way?
So a lot of lesson learned from my previous companies. Like my network of entrepreneurs is so strong. I have so many people I can get advice, and I read a lot of books, all the tech leaders books. I probably read them all. So I had everything in place already. I think my journey with Spines is much faster than my journey with Niv Publishing was, because I understand how to structure it properly. I had access to VC money because that's a tech company, that's not a service company. So all of that combined, of course, I had to adapt very to that pace of growing. In Niv Publishing, it took me almost a decade to get to 400 team members. In Spines, within 3 years, we are already 100 persons, 100 team members. And by the way, with 100 people in Spines, we can publish almost twice titles than what Niv Publishing does with 400 people. So it's a very different approach to publishing. And because I was able to grow so fast, 3 months ago, we finalized the Series A of $16 million led by Oren Zev. Oren Zev is one of the first investors of Audible. Okay. So he comes from the publishing industry. And actually, that's a very inspiring story about how I get to know him and how we end up having this Series A with him. Because about 2 years ago, I went to a Q&A event with him. Like he was the topic of the event, like Q&A with Oren Zev. And there were about 30 tech founders in the room. And they all asked him very interesting questions. And his answers was like, wow, he's so clever. And by the time the event was end, I realized that no one is trying to reach out to him. And I'm like, okay, so I will. I went directly to him. He gave me his email. I remember I was sitting in the coffee house next to the hotel. I was thinking, like, I need to send him an email that will get his attention. He is a billionaire. Everyone reach out to him because they want his money. I will try a different approach. And in the headline of the email, the title was, "Seeking for your wisdom, not your capital." Okay? And we ended up having a Zoom call. And in the Zoom call, I asked him if he could be my mentor. And he told me, "You are cute and everything, but I'm not doing such stuff. But here is my phone number. If you ever have anything you'd like to ask, feel free to reach out to me." I ended up asking him a lot of questions throughout the journey. After the announcement of the seed round, we got so many inbounds from top-tier VCs. Michael Eisenberg, he's a very clever guy. He told me, "Tell everyone we are not fundraising." So that's what I did. And that only got them more interested. So eventually, we ended up meeting with all of those VCs. And then we had 4 different VCs that I was communicating with. And I realized that Oren Zev is in Israel. So I asked him, "Can we have a coffee? I have a few questions to ask you. Who do you think is the best VC to be my partner for the journey?" And we met for a coffee. And while I'm explaining him the growth of the company, the progress that we were accomplished, he told me, "You know what? 2 years ago, you told me what we are planning on doing. I actually see 2 years afterwards that you actually did it. I invest in founders. and we ended up shaking hands and we finalized the round with him. And that's an inspiring story because he's a billionaire. I don't know, in starting my journey as a tech founder, I reached out to him. He gave me his attention, and I kept on building the relationship, and we ended up having this Series A together, and now having access to his connections and to the values that he brings to the table. Like, for me, the success of Spines, it's inevitable. It will happen because I have access to the highest tier of thinking of how building a tech company. And so trust the journey. We started this podcast, me telling you about how I failed as a musician, how I failed as an author, how I ditched my engineering career, and eventually everything makes sense as I progressed into what I'm trying to create with Spines nowadays. Like everything is happening for a reason. You know?
I guess for founders that maybe are in their first company, the point right before train that management company with Niv Publishing.
Yes.
Is there a piece of advice that you think would have been most helpful at that point to you when you had a company that was running and it was successful, but you were looking to widen your influence and build more?
So I think that the mistakes I did back in the day that eventually I realized them is I always tried to look for leaders outside of my company and like bringing very talented managers into the company. But because they didn't grow inside my business, they don't know the business, and the time it took them to understand the business and bring an insightful impact, that's cost a lot of money and a lot of mistakes that I had to finance until they went on board with everyone else. So what I realized is that company grow and you hire so many people, you realize I already have the leaders inside the company. I just need to detect them. I need to know who they are. I need to find a way to figure that out and then train them and then send them to good mentors that I know that can give them more experience and build them up in the company. That's what we end up doing. And then we start to look out not only into our employees, but also to our customers. As I said to you, the sales managers in Niv Publishing is one of my first best-selling authors.
Through your employees and your customers for people who could potentially be talent.
Yes.
That's great advice.
And they know the business. As a customer, as an employee, they know they can bring value to the table from day one. And probably you will be their first opportunity to become high-level managers. So they will give their best. Because if you bring someone from different company, you probably have to pay extra.
Yeah.
But if you give someone a chance, you can pay him a little bit less. Always try to be very cost effective in everything you do, because eventually those small amounts add up to huge amounts, and use technology to do that. There are so many companies who don't really know everything that they are spending their money on. Because if you're trying to create a growth company, first you focus on revenues. Eventually, you need to focus on how much you are spending, because how much you are profiting is determined by how much you are spending. And that was a very expensive lesson I learned in Niv Publishing, that I realized that I better focus on the spending, not only on the revenue. Eventually, I want to build a company that makes a profit so I could reinvest those profits and keep pushing the growth of the company upwards. But by the way, that's because I didn't have back in the day access to VC money. Nowadays, which I finally know how to properly fundraise for a company, that's a very different approach, because in tech growth companies, you burn a lot of cash to grow fast, okay? But that will make sense afterwards because you were able to grow so fast, you took a huge chunk of the market, and being the first to market, that's a very huge advantage because you can seize a huge chunk of the market, and eventually the profit will come afterwards. It depends what is your approach. If you are a growth company or a service company, that's a very different approach. Either way, having access to VC money, it's a huge advantage for if you're trying to create a business.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much.